Welcome to But I Digress, a cocktails and conversation podcast with your hosts, Warren Smith and me, Irish Stewart. Come on in, honey.
And welcome back to another, it's been a while, edition of But I Digress with myself, Warren, and of course, my partner in crime, my trusted friend, my co-host. We share the airwaves. Irish, how are you today?
Good, Warren. How are you?
It
has been a long time.
It has been a long time. Whenever I try to be clever, it always just sounds stupid. But anyway. No, I'm doing very well. It's been a while since we've recorded anything, actually. I mean, we talk all the time, but it's been a while since we've actually recorded anything. So,
Back by demand.
Yes. and doing something that we haven't done in a very, very long time, because, I mean, normally we just get together and we just chat about life, the universe, and everything over a cocktail or two. And but it's actually it's spooky season, so
it is spooky season.
Well, depending on when you're actually listening to this podcast, but at the moment, anyway, it's spooky season.
Currently spooky season.
Yes.
My favorite season.
Yes, it is, isn't it? You're very, very Halloween-y, aren't you? You very much into it.
I'm a big old Halloween-y.
And when exactly, because I obviously not being an American,
yes.
Halloween's not really a big deal where I live, and of course in a lot of other countries it's not either. When is it exactly? What's the actual date?
Well, I understand why you don't know that, and it's okay for you all to be very, very wrong. But it is on October 31st, actually.
October 31st. Okay, so we've still got a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm glad for that, because I am working on a pop-up Halloween walkthrough with my next-door neighbor. It's going to be between our houses, so I need a couple more weeks.
Okay. So is spooky season in Halloween's a big thing in Canada as well, isn't it? It's not just the United States, it's all of North America. Is that right?
And it is spreading about a bit. There are some areas in Japan and Tokyo where it's become very popular. Okay. And because of that, they shut down the streets now at 9 p.m. and say nobody is allowed to celebrate Halloween. So they said the streets of this city are not for that. So come to our streets in our city. It is for that. We like it.
Okay. So is there a build-up, like you're saying you're preparing all the I suppose decorations and the
haunted houses,
and so forth, and even for myself, obviously not being American, but we're still seeing all American TV. We see all of the the hugeness of what it seems to be when we watch American TV and movies and so forth. But it's like, is it a bit like the Christmas period, where there's a build-up, where there's lots of things that build up to it? Or is it literally like, it's just the one day and that's it?
Well, it's a build-up in the sense of the fact that I think people get excited about the fall because it's autumn here. And it starts to build up a little excitement that way. But it used to be a lot bigger. Almost everybody would go trick-or-treating if you were a kid. And then we had some issues with some of the people who were very religious, trying to put a stop to that. So there has been kind of a diminished amount of people who participate. Plus, we do have people, especially like in certain neighborhoods, and like in ours, we have people from all over the world. And like you said, a lot of people don't celebrate Halloween there. So they come here and they get a little bit of a taste of it, in our neighborhood at least, with the people who do it. So my next door neighbor and I, and then there's people around the blocks that do it. But it's certainly not every house or, most of the houses the way it used to be. But I think the buildup now is diminished in a sense that it used to be all through October, you'd go maybe to the Halloween stores and you'd buy all your things and you'd get excited about the things that you were buying for, giving away for trick-or-treating or the decorations that you put up. But now, by the time it's the very beginning of October, the stores have pushed out the Halloween stuff so quickly and so early that by the time it's already right now, all the Christmas stuff is in the stores. They're already putting out all the Christmas things and the Halloween things, and it's not even 2 weeks away from Halloween at this point, basically. They are already basically gone. Wow. So it's really been pushed earlier and earlier and earlier every year. I think, we have rampant consumerism here in America, especially, and I am guilty of it in a lot of ways. So I have to admit, the animatronics, like the Halloween animatronics, those go very quickly. So if you want those types of things, you have to buy them in August, say.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And
wow.
It's
Okay.
Well, it's a little diminished for me too because it is my mother's birthday, so she does like to have some of the attention on her. But I've explained to her many times that is not going to happen.
Well, we do. We do. Where I live, there is a bit of a Halloween thing. The sort of local community, if you like, they actually, I think, sometimes we did get some very young children doing trick or treating, but it was very hit or miss, like whether it did happen or didn't happen, what they're now doing is, especially where I live, is that they take over a local park, and then what they do is all the kids get dressed up and they all go down to the park, and then they trick or treat all the vendors who are set up around the park, and so they can get all of their stuff and then go back. But it's totally safe, so the parents can literally just let the kids run wild without any fear of them. Because obviously with trick or treating young kids, you've got to have you've got to have, obviously the parents have got to be standing at the bottom of the steps, because God only knows, So the beauty of them being in a local park is that they can just go free range and they can have a great time all dressed up and stuff. So we do see a little bit of that, but it's I know my grandkids, they adore Halloween. They think it's really wonderful.
It is really fun.
It was nothing when I grew up. Like, it didn't even exist. When my daughter grew up, didn't really exist, but people talked about it a bit. Now, with the kids, the younger kids actually do. They actually do go out trick-or-treating. So it's definitely on the climb here. It's on the climb. It's being adopted, put it that way.
Yes, we are spreading our evilness everywhere. This
is good Americanism being spread. So it's all good. It's all very good. So no, it's all really good. But
we do the kids parties and stuff now too, because it's safer for communities instead of having everybody go out and trick or treat. They'll set up a park and they'll have a big thing, and it's really fun. But that's going to be on the weekend, and Halloween is on Tuesday, so we're still doing our trick-or-treat thing.
Right, okay.
Still do it.
Yeah.
But that's why I suggested these movies.
Yes, well, I didn't even think we said. We just started talking about Halloween.
That's right. I got excited about it.
No, that's all right. No, because we digressed before we even had a chance to digress about what we were digressing and talking about. But yes, but no. Please explain, because you had this great idea. So,
well, I don't know that I had the great idea. I think you had mentioned to me that we should probably start doing some reviews again, and I just happened to be watching Turner Classic Movies channel. I don't know if you could have that there. But they put on a lot of old fun movies, and because it's spooky season, they did put on a couple of movies that I thought, oh my gosh, these are great. I needed you to watch them, so I didn't know if you'd seen them. So I suggested.
And I had not seen either movie, and there's two movies we're going to chat about. The interesting thing is that what I didn't realise, especially because, we kind of used to be part of a movie podcast a number of years ago, and these movies never came up in those several years of it being done. And what I didn't realise is that these two movies are actually kind of seen as quite a big deal. I didn't realise just how much of a big deal they actually are, even though I'd never really heard about them. One of the reasons may be because one of them is a Hammer film, and I'll be honest with you, I never really got into that whole British Hammer thing. And I'm starting to maybe regret that, because I'm seeing a lot of things which are interesting. But anyway, we can we'll get to all that. So, but anyway, these are older spooky movies, sort of like that we're looking at. One of them is from the 1960s, and one of them is from the 1930s. So it's so we're looking at that sort of horror movie, which is now not really even considered horror, I think. Probably kids watch these on a Sunday afternoon and aren't worried about them at all. But once upon a time, they were probably seen as a bit spooky, I suppose. And and maybe that's fantastic, for Halloween, if it is a family holiday. I don't know. I'm just
it can
putting
be
some ideas out there.
Then,
yeah. So
there's what I do, and then we don't have to talk about that now.
Right. But we may as well start off. So we've got two movies, as we said, and the very first one is it's from that time and that era that I remember when I was a teenager, when Australian TV didn't actually run 24 hours a day, and there was only 4 channels, I think, and only one channel ran 24 hours, and that was GTV9, and it would always run. It had the late show. I think it started at like about midnight, and it had the late show, the late show, and the late show. Right? And they were always old movies that they used to play.
Right.
And every now and again, they'd have a spooky one. And there would always be a Hammer movie in it. And of course, so that's brilliant. So, because this is a Hammer, of course, from the Hammer film studios in Britain. So it was a British film. And from 1967. And it is, of course, The Mummy's Shroud. And I thought this was great. Should I just give a very quick rundown, and then we can sort of chat about it a bit? So basically, obviously, from 1967, from the Hammer Studios, renowned, obviously, British institution of horror movies from the 1960s, and it's part of a group of 4 movies, which were all put out by Hammer, which was part of their Mummy cycle, which started with The Mummy in 1959, then moved on to The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb in 1964. And then the one that we're talking about tonight, or today, The Mummy's Shroud from 1967. And then it would be finished up with Blood of the Mummy's Tomb in 1971. So these movies pretty much covered the entire reign of Hammer, if you like, from start to finish in many ways, which is really, really interesting. But The Mummy's Shroud, so what we're talking about is the idea is that there is a pharaoh who is usurped by his brother. He then takes his during this revolution, if you like, in ancient Egypt, he is killed, and his son is taken away from the city by the protector, the slave master who protects the monarchy, if you like, and they cross out into the desert, out into the Sinai or whatever it is, where unfortunately they will be succumbed to the elements and pass on. Then, in the 1920s, Egyptologists come and basically excavate the tomb, only to, of course, have released the curse of the mummy, which is the curse is written on the mummy's shroud, hence the actual name. And if you breach the tomb and read the words of the shroud, of course, the mummy will take revenge to protect the pharaoh who is entombed there. Many people will, of course, be killed by the mummy throughout the movie, as they always are in mummy movies, until the very end. Our heroes can find a way to overcome, to either return the mummy back, or to kill the mummy, or to whatever they do. In this case, it's a bit of everything, actually. Kill it, return it, whatever, so they can live their lives without the curse. Was that a bit of a rambling all over the place explanation of what this movie is? It's a typical mummy movie, to be honest.
I was going to say, it sounded pretty well described to me.
Basically, they break into there's an ancient pharaoh, they break into the tomb, that releases the curse, so then the mummy tries to kill them all until they can find a way to overcome the mummy. I mean, it's pretty... all mummy movies are the same. They're not really any different in regards to that basic story. But it is different in the sense that these are Hammer films, which means they're all very British. All the actors are British. Apart from, obviously, there would be a number of... Vincent Price was in a ton of Hammer movies. But it is, of course, very, very British. What did you think? I'll just have a sip of my drink and let you talk for a minute.
I thought you needed to see it while I was watching it because I couldn't stop laughing, to be honest. One thing I noticed is that if you ever watched the original or I would say original, but one of the remakes that they did of The Mummy with Brendan Fraser way back.
Oh, yes.
I think in the 90s. If you've ever seen that movie, you will see parallels in this movie that fall along the lines of things that happened in this movie. They took directly from and used in Brendan Fraser's version of The Mummy. Things that happened to the people, the way the mummy chased them around, the kind of thing that was happening to them. So I thought that was really interesting because I could see the direct lifting of certain things from this movie right into the Brendan Fraser ones. So I thought that was pretty cool. It just wasn't as defined in this movie. They didn't go into detail as much as they did in the Brendan Fraser one, which isn't saying that much considering. So.
I did find that the lead up until they actually break into the tomb, it takes a long time until they actually break into the tomb. Like... the backstory, of the pharaoh. The pharaoh has a son. The pharaoh then, stops governing. He becomes a really bad pharaoh because he's obsessed with raising his son. So his brother then stages a coup and overthrows the pharaoh, and they have to escape. It takes so long. It's actually really...
It does take so long.
And then we have our Egyptologists who are, trying to find the tomb. And even this seems to take forever. And did you also notice that the Egyptian desert, and this is very much, I suppose, a British thing. Anyone who's ever watched Doctor Who will know about this, is how many mining sites or slate mines or sand pits that they can find in Britain to try to emulate the desert. And when the pharaoh and the protector and all the slaves, which once again, this still went down the track of believing that Egypt had slaves. Egypt didn't have slaves, but there is still this.
I know. We don't need to go on that.
I know, but when they're sort of going across the desert and all this sort of stuff, and you can tell that it looks like it's probably, I don't know, it's not the middle high summer, it looks like it's probably just rained, it's a miserable English day, but they're trying to pretend that it's a desert. They're all in their Egyptian sort of clothing. They're probably freezing to death when they're actually walking across. But it's so typically British, I suppose, of that period of time, the 1960s.
Well, there was nobody more British, in my opinion, than the father of one of the people who came in,
Oh, yes.
With the porters and the whole thing that he was saying about them. And it was just like, oh, you're a real asshole, aren't you? He was a proper British asshole, though, he was.
Yes, we should probably explain. So within the group of Westerners or Egyptologists, there's several different people. There's the main professor who was it Sir Basil Walton, who is leading the expedition. There's a young man. They've got an interpreter.
Who happens to be a beautiful woman.
It's Hammer. They always are, So,
Yes.
So they're out on this expedition, but then they get lost apparently for quite a while, and this is when the father of the son who apparently had funded the expedition, he comes with his wife to try to find them, and then in the end they all end up in the tomb, and that's why the curse is then put on them. But yes, no, he's the father, the one who funds the expedition. He is a proper asshole, isn't he? I mean, he really is.
Yes.
He treats everybody so badly, whether it be his staff, whether it be the locals, his disrespect for the Egyptian police, and even his son, and his wife, absolutely
and the way he was treating the girl or the woman who was the the woman who was the translator and the interpreter, who was reading the hieroglyphs,
yes,
who refused to read the shroud. She says, "I don't think I should," and he was like, "Well, aren't you the smart one?"
Yes.
What are you doing here?
Yes,
He makes fun of her.
It's like you just
someone else to do it.
Was a little bit odd all the way through the movie. It's like I sort of feel that of the people who die, at least the first two people who die, 2 or 3 people who die, I sort of like I feel sorry for them because
I felt sorry for them. Yeah,
they've done nothing wrong. I mean, they didn't know they were doing anything wrong, and but so you feel quite sorry for them, but. When basically when the father is actually killed, it's a little bit like woohoo, yeah, about time.
I know, yeah, I wasn't actually feeling too sorry for him.
No,
can we please talk about the crystal ball bearing gypsy woman? And I'm sorry, I should say Romani. That wasn't right. Okay, but also, why was she in Egypt? So I'm just curious.
Well, there was obviously the protector of the tomb. Now. And then he has this sidekick who is like this gypsy. I thought that's his mother. Was that meant to be his mother?
That was his mother, and she was a fortune teller.
Right,
okay? And they would all come. Everybody who had gone into the tomb goes to see the fortune teller. Okay, and she tells them all. She sees death, nothing but death, nothing but death, nothing but death. And she says, "This is my son." And then he comes in and he says, "You're gonna die." Basically.
Yes.
And he's creepy through the whole thing, but that's her son.
Okay, so that's
they're
her
like
son.
working in cahoots.
So they're the protectors. So they're like the family. They've been protecting the tomb for what 3,000 years or something, like the family upon family.
It was supposed to be like in the Brendan Fraser version. It was the Bedouins they were like Bedouin warriors that were protecting it. In this one, it was just like a dude and his mom.
Who I hate to say this was incredibly British with blackface, but
oh my god, it was so bad. I was just like, I can't.
Well, the other thing too is that did you recognise actually who the protector of the Pharaoh's tomb was?
I did
by
not.
chance. Okay,
should I?
There's a Doctor Who connection here.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
If it's from the early stuff, that I didn't start paying attention until at least David Tennant.
Okay. So the defender of the tomb is Roger Delgado. Now, Roger Delgado was the original master in Doctor Who. He was the master for a number of years. Yeah. He is the original, very first person to play the master, and would play the master through the John Pertwee era and into the Tom Baker era. Until he would be replaced, because basically is the Michelle Rodriguez. Oh, right.
the mistress.
Missy. Missy. I know.
Is that her name, Michelle Rodriguez? Is that it? Did I get that right? Did I say that wrong? I'm going to be embarrassed.
I've got a feeling, isn't Michelle Rodriguez from like all the Fast and Furious movies? Isn't that?
I might have completely screwed that up.
And I can't remember what her name is actually.
Although
maybe it is Michelle Rodriguez. I don't know.
I'm checking. Michelle Gomez. Oh my God.
Michelle Gomez. Okay. All right. Because the Master. Because the Master now has actually been played by 5 different actors through supposedly 5 different regenerations.
She was my favorite, though, and I forgot.
So she was your favorite?
Yes.
I think my favorite Master is actually... Well, it was the 3rd incarnation of the Master. I've forgotten his name now. I thought he was really good. He was during the David Tennant era. But the latest Master, and I cannot remember his name, I was never a huge fan of him until I saw him dance in one of the latest Doctor Who episodes to Rah Rah Rasputin in front of both...
Oh, God, I love that song.
Yeah, and in front of both Cybermen and Daleks, right? He's dancing to this song when the Cyberman literally just leans his head forward and the Dalek turns its head and they both look at each other like, what the fuck is going on here? It is absolutely brilliant. And I've got to admit, he won me over when he did that. But Missy was great. But it was a great lead up, wasn't it, to that concept that a Time Lord doesn't have to be, that you can regenerate into a different sex. So it was a great lead up. It was a great lead up that the Doctor could be female, when we got Jodie Whittaker. So,
right.
And of course now, David Tennant obviously is going to do the anniversary specials, but then after that, of course, we're going to have a black Doctor. So that's going to be a big change as well. So, and he looks really good from the stuff I've seen. I reckon he'll be a good Doctor actually, but. We're going to see. Anyway, I am really digressing. But the other thing too is the police inspector, the Egyptian police inspector, who seems to be the worst police officer who has ever existed. I mean, it's a little bit like forensics. What's that? I
don't know that they really had it back then, but okay.
but even the thing, I think one of the lines was, "Do you think the Shroud is linked to the murders?" And his actual line is, "Who knows?" And then he just walks out. Like, who knows? You're meant to be in charge of this investigating
he's not a
these
deep
murders.
Thinker.
But that's another British actor. Was it Richard Varner, who is once again blackface? Oh my God, there was a little bit of that in this movie. I've got to admit. But
that time period.
Yeah, I kind of give it a little bit of a, because it is the 1960s. It is Britain. They honestly did not know any better. It doesn't make it right. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't make it right. But they didn't know any better. Right?
During John Wayne, we had white people and blackface and brownface playing Native Americans and all kinds of stuff. You know what? I don't know it's that they didn't know any better. It's just that I think that white people sometimes are assholes. Because it's not that they don't know better. It's just that they just don't fucking think sometimes. Okay?
I know.
Get your head out of your ass and just take a step back for a second and think about this.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look. I mean, I have to admit, thank God, in British cinema today, they would never, ever attempt to do something like this again. And the other great thing too in Britain today, there are a ton of Middle Eastern British actors, or Indian British actors, or African British actors. So of that
higher people.
Yeah, of those cultural groups is what I mean. I mean, they're British, but they're foreign.
That's what I'm saying. There's plenty of people out there.
That's right. So there's no problem
who can do the job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, that's exactly right. I know in the TV series Ain't Half Hot Mum, there was a lot of thing about the fact that one of the main characters in that was an Englishman who played an Indian wearing blackface for a number of years through that series. But I've actually heard interviews with the people who made the show, and they freely admit that when they look at it now, they're appalled by what they did. But
I think at times, I've written jokes in the past for scripts and stuff, and not appalling, but I've looked back on them later and just gone, what the fuck? What was I thinking? So yeah, when you know better, you do better. That's what you're supposed to do. But it doesn't mean that we didn't know better. Really, it's just that we never really fucking thought it through.
I think I think you're right. I think
we all really would know better if somebody brought it. Actually, so
I think you're right.
I don't know. So I want to say about this movie, though, the funny thing to me is that how simply it all ended. It was just wrapped right up. The MacGuffin was there the whole time, and nobody knew.
But you know the thing that really struck me about this movie? They're meant to be in Cairo because it's set in the 1920s, and obviously, I mean, there's that concept, of the Howard Carter era, with Tutankhamun's discovery, the tomb, and of course, I think, if I'm not wrong, this is where this whole concept started, wasn't it? The curses. Was it with Carter where this stuff all started?
That was the big one. I don't know if that's where it started, but that was the big one. That was the first time everybody found an intact tomb like that. And then everybody started dying from, the mosquito bite and the things that had happened. So you know how superstitious people are.
Oh, yes.
And also it was probably a huge curse. So
it could have been. Just don't tell an Egyptologist that because they get really upset. What is it? Aliens and curses, I think, are the two things they get really upset about. Yeah, they get really upset.
You know what? I live to stir the pot, so that's kind of my thing.
But one of the things I found really interesting, and I think you get this a lot in movies of this era, is they're meant to be in downtown Cairo. But there's no one around. Like, it is the quietest city.
Right? They couldn't afford extras.
I mean, Cairo in the 1920s would have been a bustling city of a
but not on that street. It was a quiet cul-de-sac.
When he leaves the hotel in the end, where he's going to try to escape Egypt and go back to Britain, and when he leaves, and there's just nobody on the street, he's just alone. And I think
it's the same reason everybody always ended up going to the exact same fortune teller, because there was nobody else in town.
Yes.
It was the only game in town.
But it's like 1920s Cairo is like this small rural country town, like its population of 25. Like, there's just nobody there.
I told you they couldn't afford extras. Come on.
Yes. And I thought that was funny. I loved the wife, though. When I say the wife and mother.
Yes.
I loved her just absolute disdain for her husband. It's like,
I think we all felt it.
I know. Yes. I mean, she's a very polite version of us. Like, when we're yelling at the screen, she's just sitting back going, "Well, you might die. Oh dear, how sad. Never mind." It was,
off you go then.
Which I thought was great. But the other thing too is it's set in the 1920s. Obviously, that Howard Carter era of British Egypt and so forth. But what's interesting though is that the way they're dressed. They're all dressed like it's 1967. They're not dressed like it's 1927.
No.
Like, their clothes were all very modern for the time. The women's dresses were, they were not 1920s outfits. The men, their suits were basically straight out of, Harrods or, in 1967. They were not what men were wearing in the 1920s. The same with their hairstyles.
Got their wardrobe from home.
Well, it is almost like they did just dress themselves, actually. That's what it almost felt like. It's like, just bring a couple of summer suits. That's fine. You got a linen suit? Yeah, that'll do. Like,
there are some movies and different aspects where they make the decision to actually dress, even though, say, it's set in medieval times, they make the decision to dress people in slightly more modern styles mixed with a medieval thing. Or even just more modern styles. It just, just to have a different look. So it is possible they chose to do that. But on the other hand, it's kind of likely that they asked him to bring a couple of options from home and let wardrobe look at them.
Right.
So,
does
that happens all the time.
It doesn't. I mean, in the film industry, we're talking. But see, that's the thing. I thought
for extras.
Well, because I actually thought the Hammer Studios was reasonably well funded. Like in the 60s.
Maybe they made the decision they wanted that look. It's possible.
Maybe yes. It's interesting. I was quite stunned by it. Was when I looked, I thought, this is for when the film was made. This is kind of it's like if you had made the movie today, they were meant to be 1920s, and they're wearing Calvin Klein t-shirts and jeans. It's like really like it looked a bit. I don't know. It just put me off a little.
Are the wardrobe people still alive? We could interview them.
Well, they might be. Actually, they might be. You never know.
I'm saying.
Although I think pretty much
it's a good question.
I think pretty much every one of those major actors in this film is now dead. I think. I don't think there's any of them left.
People.
Oh, the ward. Well, yeah. Some of the young ones, maybe.
Like somebody on the production, maybe. Just anybody that might know.
Yeah,
that's just a question. Yeah. Just a thought. But I digress.
It's just I don't know. Sometimes when I watch movies now, I get really interested in looking at the wardrobe for some reason. I don't know
you
why.
Like clothes, first of all. You're a fashion whore.
Secondly, true.
It's hard once you start focusing on different things from the background, or if you've ever seen a film being made, it really does change the way you watch it. So it's hard for me to watch a film now without thinking about that PA that's throwing the snow over the wall, behind, in the shot. So, or too many extras on the set. I'm just like, dear God, I wouldn't want to have been there that day. That would have been a fucking nightmare. So it changes the way you watch a movie.
Yes.
Because it takes you out of the fantasy a little bit.
Yeah.
It's, you're paying attention to the clothes instead of the story. I don't know.
What did you think of the Mummy? Like the actual mummy itself, once it comes, it's reanimated or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I'm going to talk about the makeup on it a little bit, the effects for the makeup. Because when I was a kid and I wanted to pretend like I had a broken finger or a broken arm just to play around, I would take toilet paper and wet it and smack it down on there and squeeze the water out and let it dry around you. That's what I feel like they did with that man's face. I feel like it was toilet paper that they wet and smashed on his face and then dug little eye holes out.
Well, actually, that's very similar because I was thinking paper mache, which is the same thing.
It was probably tissue paper or something, yes.
Paper
pulp thing.
But I swear there was a scene when we saw the mummy from the rear, and I swear I could see a zipper up the back. I don't know.
Possible.
Yeah, I really do think I could see a zipper.
Original swamp suit or something.
Well, it's like, have a look at not the very original Cybermen from Doctor Who, but the Cybermen from the Patrick Troughton era, and they are just wearing wetsuits spray painted silver. That's what they're wearing.
They all bend with these little. Yes.
So
yes, they do.
But it's the way the eyes were behind. It was the mask was a little bit like it was. Yeah,
you could see the guys. You could see the guy in there. Let's just say you could see it wasn't a mummy, but it was a dude back there, and his eyes were fine. He needed a little more black makeup around his eyes, I think. They were going to be doing that, but maybe. I don't know.
Well, apparently the other thing too is
bad.
Apparently in the first two of these mummy movies from Hammer, the man who actually played, like the slave protector of the Pharaoh, who would go on to be the mummy, he actually would also play the mummy in those two films. But in this one, it was almost like he just showed up to film his things and then went home and they got someone else to play the mummy. So it's kind of, even though he
was
played
getting a little
that
too
role
big for his britches by the third film. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he played that role in the
Didn't
other
want to be
movies
hanging around.
and then didn't play it in this one, even though he's meant to be playing it. It's the same person. So that was a bit, I don't know, sort of all a bit.
Maybe he was busy on another shoot, and they had to fill it.
True. This is very
He
true.
could have had another booking. Could have had it. Maybe he was highly in demand.
Does it, I mean, because I know you're not really a big, like, horror movie fan, but I know you do like this sort of fun stuff. Does it make you want to watch some more? Like, or is this very much just a Halloween sort of thing?
Oh no, I would watch it. I come across them now because they're on. And
yes.
because I don't, even if the TV's on, if I'm doing something else, I will pay attention to it, but not really sometimes. But if I catch something that it, piques my interest, I'm going to turn it on. So that's why I was trying to find Curse of the Cat People today, which was on, but then I had a little problem with my TV, I was telling you. So I was a little annoyed because I couldn't really watch it, and I got only a little bit of it. So I'm going to go back and watch that one. I'd be interested in watching it. But I love movies like this in the sense of the historical value of it. I think it's great to see what we were doing. But two, I like to see what really entertained people, especially back then. And it's still entertaining me now. So I'm just very amused by it. And to be honest, the second movie that we're going to talk about in a minute really amused the hell out of me. And mostly because of the dialogue. So.
Oh yes, I think in many ways it's actually it's actually quite an important movie in movie history. But we can get onto that in a moment. But it's but I suppose if we just round up on this movie is that it's a little bit like I think sometimes we forget that Hammer movies, like Hammer horror, was actually quite a big deal in the 50s, 60s, and very early 70s before it came to an end. Like, these were cinema release movies. These were not, some B-grade piece of what. I mean, there's a ton of them, out there. And a lot of them sort of very, very famous sort of movies, So it's... I kind of forgotten about these. It's like I said originally, these things would always turn up on the Late Show, when we used to when I was a teenager, and they were always kind of fun because they weren't spooky enough that you couldn't sleep, but they were still kind of spooky at the same time. So they were kind of all right. These would be the
movies like Elvira would show on our Hurley show.
Like
that. So Mistress of the Dark. These would be the kinds of movies, and I like that.
Yeah,
that's fun.
No, I agree. So definitely, it's definitely a thumbs up for you. You want to watch more of these?
Oh, I will watch more of those. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's
sure.
It's not my favourite genre of all of these sorts of movies. I think anyone who used to listen to another podcast would know I adore, of this time period, Italian horrors and Italian sci-fi of this period. I absolutely think they're brilliant because they're just so out there. They would probably be my favourite. But I think Hammer is definitely something I haven't watched enough of, and I really should watch more. And they're so easily accessible. Especially maybe get hold of a Vincent Price one too, because who doesn't love Vincent Price? I mean come on. He's just one of my heroes, He's, and also Vincent Price. He played the Saint. He actually played Simon Templar.
That is true.
So he's pretty important to me. Vincent Price.
Next up to play that guy. Next up to play the Saint, the guy from Bridgerton.
Yes.
I remember his name.
I can't remember his name
but
either.
He was pretty hot.
It's about a year away, I think. Yeah, so, although I don't know how anyway. So, that's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah. So, all right, well, I reckon we'll just take a very quick break and then we'll come back with our second spooky Halloween adventure. And we are back to talk about our second spooky movie, if you did call it that. I actually, sometimes I actually wonder, is this really a spooky movie, or is it actually more a suspense movie, actually, when you really think about it?
It is more suspenseful, but it's more of like a suspenseful, creepy thriller, I think. It's a little, it's creepy, but it's a suspenseful thriller in a sense.
Yes, I think you're right. So we are talking about a movie which I didn't actually realise is quite famous, and that is The Mystery of the Wax Museum from 1933 from the United States, a Hollywood production this time. And so we'll give you a very brief rundown of this one. So it starts in the 1920s in London, and there is an artist, a sculptor, was it Ivan Idor, who is the greatest wax creator of, sort of wax figures, basically in the world. And he's created this amazing display of figures through history, and they're so real, no one has ever been as good as he is, and so forth. Except the man he's in business with, not a very nice man, and he's not making enough money because he wants it to be one of these sideshows where people come and pay lots of money rather than this amazing
Jack the Ripper and things like that.
That's right.
Exciting things.
And so because no one's coming to this display, because it's very artistic rather than, out there and wild. And so he decides that he's going to do, what do they call it? The stock take.
Insurance
He's going
fraud.
to, burn it down, basically, and collect the money. So which they do, there's a huge fight, and of course our sculptor is, well, very, very badly, hurt through this, and they lose, he loses his display and so forth. We then cut forward about 10 years to New York in the United States. So basically now set in real time, because of course this movie is from 1933. And
actually, I do believe it was 13 years in the future, just because it was. I think it was 13 years because it was 1920, I believe.
Okay.
When they said the first one did, but yeah, it could be. Yeah, I could be wrong, but
no. No. I think you're right. Yep. No, you're right.
Anyway,
you're right. And
I just wanted to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, no, that's good. And and so anyway, we now have a situation where our main hero or heroine, I suppose they would have said back then, is basically a newspaper reporter, and but she's just basically about to be sacked if she cannot come up with the next great news story. And so she hunts around, and to find out that basically on New Year's Eve, one of the things which has happened is a very famous model has died under suspicious circumstances. The boyfriend has been arrested and is in jail, and she decides that she's going to investigate this. Well, he's then released, found that he's not guilty. But something else then happens, which is really, really weird, and that is her body disappears from the morgue. It's then found out that lots of bodies have been disappearing from the morgue, and she puts basically two and two together and realises that Idor, or what was his name? Was it Igor or Igor?
I think it was. I think they pronounced Igor, I believe.
Igor, and it's this is like young Frankenstein, isn't it? Idor? No, it's Igor.
Frankenstein.
So where was I? Yes. So and she works out that these other bodies are disappearing, and she puts two to two together and realizes that that there's something going on between this new display in New York and the missing bodies, because these new wax mannequins which are appearing look very, very similar to the people who have been disappearing. The police get involved, and then, of course, one of our main stars is, of course, kidnapped, and then is going to be turned into a wax mannequin. But, of course, just in time, they break in and they solve the problem and work out that, of course, what what's going on is that Igor is, of course, stealing the bodies from the morgue, and he is, of course, because he's so horribly burnt, he doesn't have the use of his hands anymore from the fire in London, that all he's basically doing is taking real people and just coating them in wax, and that's the way he's recreating these amazing figures. So, I mean, look, there's a bit more to it than that, but that's the basic premise of it. What's amazing about this film, though, is that obviously from 1933, but it's actually, I thought that this was a bad colour print, but it's actually not. This film was shot in colour, but shot in colour at a time when colour looked really shit. But it's was actually shot in colour. The other thing too is it's what's often referred to as pre-code American cinema, which is, for anyone who doesn't understand, it's basically the time between the end of the silent movies to talkies, where there was virtually very little censorship in the United States, and they were allowed to get away with quite a lot. Even though, from our perspective today, it looks very harmless, but at the time,
it was shocked, actually.
Yeah, it's actually was viewed as being very outrageous, at the actual time. So, what did you think?
Listen, I actually enjoyed this movie. First of all, it wasn't very long, and I do love a short-ass movie. But this one, I loved it because, one, it had so many ridiculous things in it, but there were things in it that I found to be so amusing. First of all, the girl who was playing the lead, the reporter of Florence Dempsey, a woman named Glenda Farrell, I thought she had a lot of personality through the whole thing. Her lines were funny. I think she had some really great one-liners that they had given her. So I was very amused by some of the things she got away with saying, some of the things that they were doing. And another thing I was shocked by is that one of the characters in this, it was one of the women that Igor became infatuated with, was actually played by Fay Wray of King Kong fame. So,
correct. Yeah.
And she was honestly just freaking gorgeous. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was an interesting movie, not because the story itself was so great or surprising, because I think we all knew where it was going.
Yes.
But I was surprised by, honestly, the way her character, not Fay Wray's character, but Glenda Farrell's character, who played the reporter, basically ran the town, but at the same time kept getting treated and getting slapped on the ass and stuff by these men. And it was really a strange setup. So it was funny for me to remember that it was from like 1933. And the fact that this woman was at all in the workplace in the beginning in this was a big deal in this, you know? And yes, the relationship she had with the guy who was her editor. What was going on with that? And then later you find out, and it's just like, what? I wasn't expecting it.
Yes.
So I it had some surprises for me. Some of the characters were just very interesting. I don't know.
I mean, the dialogue. I mean, there's a
scene at the cop station, the police station. Holy crap! When she goes in there and starts talking to them.
Well, she just strolls into the police station. It's a little bit like, everyone knows me. I'll just run it. Hey, just tell.
Some cop sitting there looking at a dirty magazine, like
I know he's reading the equivalency of Playboy probably for the time. Right, and she sort of like it's all cool.
It's like, how's your sex life? Oh, yeah, bad.
And then when they actually interview one of the suspects, she joins in the interview like she's there with them. Like,
Oh, I loved how they were going to follow the one guy in and she said, "Come on, cops! I know he's in here, and they just all go break into the house and
I
just
know.
start taking stuff.
There's no concepts of warrants or reasonable,
Nothing.
thing. No, it's a little bit like, hey, I'm sure he's in here. Come on, guys. And they,
And she went out of the basement, but they all went upstairs when they
I
came
know.
in. Just like, what?
oh, but also that her dialogue, it reminded me a lot of. Who's that very famous American actress? Was it Come Up and See Me Sometime? Or
Mae West.
Mae West. It was very much like that. It was this very she was very. It was such a weird character because she's so powerful, so in control, so
and
knowing
so
what she wants, and drunk. But at the same time, she's treated like shit. Like it's like, but she doesn't seem to mind that. And I know that's probably a sign of the times and all the rest of it. But,
it was for sure, but it was honestly amusing to see the juxtaposition of the way she was dealing with these men and the way she was allowing them to deal with her, and it was weird because I mean, at least one of those would have gotten a punch in the chest from me.
Yes. well, one of the things is there's a scene where because she shares an apartment with the woman who gets kidnapped. And
Fay Wray's character. Yes.
Yeah, Fay Wray. Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is she's like when they're in there and they're lazing around in. Well, honestly, I mean, you turn on kids' TV and they're dressed skimpier than this. But for the time, that was kind of like their equivalent of full frontal nudity. It was a big deal.
She was barely dressed in bed. Yeah, you can tell. So,
like it was a big deal, sort of then for that. And then also
that conversation cracked me up.
Oh, yes, I know. And then when they actually get the man who's working for Igor, and he's a heroin addict. Like
yes, the whole thing.
That blew me away that they were so open about all of that. It's like
and they were showing him like one of the guys gave him some heroin and stuff.
Yes,
it was really weird.
I know. Yes, he turns up and there's like the dealers there who actually, you actually see him score. Like it's really like, and I suppose that's all that concept, isn't it? Of what they call now pre-code. That concept that there was no sensory board to stop this sort of stuff. So it just went out. They made the films to what they thought would be interesting or whatever for whatever reason.
And it worked.
Yeah, there was no censors board that sort of said no, you can't do that.
So I was shocked they showed all that stuff, but it made it more interesting to me to see that stuff because I was just like, what is happening? Are they really showing this guy as a junkie in 1933? So yeah, it was pretty interesting.
I know. I thought it was absolutely amazing. In fact, I'll actually say of the two movies we watched, I actually really preferred this one.
I did too.
Yeah, yes. There was something, I think just
charming
that era. Yeah. And also, it was outrageous. This was a movie that was pushing boundaries, for its time. And where Hammer horror is like, it's just, well, honestly, they're pretty tame actually if you consider the time that they were being made. Really, they're not exactly. The violence isn't over the top. The sexuality isn't really over the top. Not for its time, anyway, is what I meant. Right. Like you watch British movies from the late 60s. I mean, they're a lot more outrageous than, the Mummy's Shroud, for argument's sake.
Right.
Sure. But this is the exact opposite. This is really pushing boundaries. And I was really... I thought it was really interesting, and I love the idea that the lead in this is a woman. Like I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Like I love that. Like she was the one solving the crime. She was the one who actually worked out what was going on, and it wasn't like she worked it out and then suddenly it was like the man came along and said, "Oh, thanks, Toots, I'll take it from here." It was a little bit like, no, she led it all the way through, from start to finish. And
still made, and at the end, the ending was something I didn't expect, because they led you to believe something else was going to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked that. I liked that it was, but I also didn't necessarily love what happened. So I'm going to leave it that way. I don't want to tell people what really happened, because you shall watch it, because it's actually pretty interesting.
Yes.
And fun to watch.
What is a little bit, will throw a number of people when they watch it, is that, as I said at the start, that this was actually filmed in colour. It's not... When I looked at it, I thought, oh, here we go, they've colorised it. But it's actually not. It was actually filmed in colour, but in 1933... what they had was only what they call a two-colour system. It's where they kind of... I won't go into the technology of it because I don't even fully understand it. But what it does, it means that certain colours are very powerful and other colours are really washed out, and it looks very weird. At the time, it was still probably amazing to see. Right,
yes.
Then, look, we've heard stories, even the very first people to see the very first movies, believe that the train was about to literally come out of the screen, so, so at the time, 1933, this was probably really amazing, watching a movie in colour, but for modern audiences, it will throw people a bit, because the colour, it kind of almost looks like it's a cheap, washed-out, colorized version of an old black and white film, that's not the case at all.
I did notice there was one shot that they did of her walking in through the doors, I believe, to the wax museum at one point, and that's where I really noticed that it was dark around the edges, almost like the film had degraded in a way, but it was still colored kind of in the center, but it was faded with some of the colors, and other colors were like really dark, and it was interesting to see it. And I was like, because I thought initially it was colorized too, and I wondered if it was just because the film had degraded, or whether it was just a bad colorizing job.
Yes.
So, I didn't bother to look that up.
But so that's very interesting. But of course, we talk about, like, with the first movie we watched, The Mummy Shroud, which of course is... There are so many Mummy movies, even though there were obviously 4 in the series from Hammer. But, I mean, how many Mummy movies have been made over the years? I mean, there must be hundreds, I mean...
Probably, yeah.
But, of course, the whole wax concept of, people being stolen and turned into wax mannequins... not as many. The genre is not as big as, obviously, as the Mummy kind of franchise, if you like. But it's still big. There's been a lot of wax movies. I mean, Vincent Price, of course, starred in the very famous... I don't actually know if I don't actually think they're remakes of this, but they're very similar. That idea of stealing people and turning them into wax mannequins, and then of course
the
there
wax
was
house or something.
Yes,
like
and then of course there's the very famous movie that everyone loves to hate. The only reason people went to watch it was because it starred Paris Hilton, where she's turned into a wax mannequin. I was at the House of Wax, I think it was, from the early thousands or something like that.
Okay.
Which I've heard a lot of people condemn as being a terrible movie because Paris Hilton is in it. But then I think the only reason why people went to see it was because Paris Hilton was in it. So,
it's also because people like those weird types of creepy movies. They just do.
Yeah.
Even if they're silly. That's why Sharknado is a thing. Even though it wasn't creepy, it was just silly, and people liked it.
When I saw the very first Sharknado, and then every year when they would bring out a new... Just, they came out on July... There was an actual date. They would release them every year. It was July... I can't remember. But it was literally like... It was Sharknado Day, and every year they would be released. And and was how many did they make in the end? Was there 6?
10, I think. I think there was like 10 of them, weren't there?
I didn't think there was 10, but there's a lot.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Because they ran for... Well, there was one a year, and I think they ran about 6-7 years or something. So, and of course, they would just get even if I know it's a little bit to sort of say they get nutsier than Sharknado, but they actually do. Every single one. Well, I mean, when we got into time travel and all sorts of stuff in the end, and they went into space inside a shark. I mean, it gets absolutely.
That was actually the capsule for that was actually here at Universal Studios at the Dave School. In their setup, and I actually went in and saw the capsule from that. So,
really?
Fun. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's but it was
not because I intended to go see it, but because it was there when I was doing a tour of the Dave School, which is a digital animation studio school. It used to be. I don't know.
I have to admit, I watched them all. I thought they were great because
if you watch tongue in cheek.
Yeah, but I think sometimes just making something for the sheer fun of it. And it's not meant to be real, it's not meant to be serious, it's just meant to be pure fun for an hour and a half. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that's absolutely fine. It's and the crazier they got, it was all right. I thought it was. I thought it was all right. I mean, they did do some other weird ones. They did some spin-offs. I remember there was Lava Lantula that was made because they were all out of the what was the film company? It was
I can't remember.
Was it Sci-Fi that did them all?
It was like Sharktopus.
Sharktopus. Oh, it stars my main man. Was it Eric Roberts is the star of Sharktopus?
Okay.
Sharktopus. I fell in love. I remember with all of those really bad Under the House of like Sci-Fi and so forth company. The creature features because they were so stupid. There was. I remember there was one was half anaconda, half piranha. There was the giant killer
Piranhaconda.
Piranhaconda, I think it probably was. There were so many of them, and then Komodo versus giants. There were so many of them, and they would always bring out people to be in them that you sort of went, oh wow! I remember there was the
just the cameos.
Well, there was a couple of them that starred Debbie Gibson and Tiffany. Like anyone who's Generation X will remember who they were, and they were the stars of the film.
They were my jam at the time. Yeah.
There's one of them that stars Debbie Gibson as a wildlife officer. If you can kind of make this work right. Although I hate to say it, I mean, I've seen some stuff on Instagram from Debbie Gibson lately, and she seems like great fun. She doesn't seem to take herself too seriously. Like she seems very capable of taking the piss out of herself. And but there's one of the ones that she's in, and it's got a cameo from Mickey Dolenz, from the Monkees.
Oh yeah.
In it, yeah. It's. I mean, some of those were just great.
Fun.
I think those are great fun. Those sorts of movies.
They are fun.
Yeah, but although I've stopped watching them recently, I have to admit, I became quite obsessed with them for quite a long time, and then kind of just all stopped. But recently, I'm starting to get an interest in them again. So I
will look forward to watching those then.
I mean, look, in saying that, there are some which are absolutely terrible, but if you view them from the point of view that they're just meant to be pure stupid fun, it's great. There's the one Lava Lantula actually stars the cast of Police Academy.
Oh, that's funny.
And that is, but the weird thing about it is they're kind of playing themselves, like the actual actors.
Right.
Like it's very that is.
Well, Michael Winslow's from here, and he always acts like that. So.
Right. So it's Lava Lantula. Oh my god, that was that was unbelievable. Yeah, giant spiders that were spewed out of a volcano when we're on fire.
That, you know what? That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It was bound to happen.
Yes. Oh, some of them are good. So, but anyway, we are digressing off this one.
We are.
But it's So it's I don't know. I really, really enjoyed this, but it is like you were saying. I do see it more as a suspense than a horror.
It's mysterious and suspenseful and kind of a little bit of a thriller. Yeah.
But then again, when you do think about it, a huge amount of horror films, the ones that aren't the slasher type horror films. They are in many ways very suspenseful type films, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just that there happens to be a creature or a monster or something along those.
Something paranormal that you can't see or hear. Like,
that's right.
One of the good ones, or one of the movies that I actually kind of like that is it's a Nicole Kidman movie called The Others, which I'm having a hard time finding right now.
Oh.
But it's a period horror film in a sense, but it's more suspense and paranormal in a way, but it's dark and creepy, but it's not a slasher flick.
No, there's no violence in it at all.
Not at all.
But
it
it's
has
freaky.
A really good twist.
It's freaky.
It has a really good twist.
So you have seen it. You're just trying to find it again. You say,
yes, I have to try to find it again. So it's not streaming anywhere I can find.
Okay, so anyone who hasn't seen it, I won't give away the twist because
don't give it away.
No, but it's a very, very good twist. It is not what you think is going to happen. I mean, you start to get weird hints about halfway through that you realise something's not right. There's something else going on, but I still didn't guess it. Honestly, I really didn't guess it. Right. It's like what was that one? The Sixth Sense? Is that what it's called with Toni Collette? And I mean, I'll be honest with you, that I didn't get the twist in that until the twist was exposed. And I've heard other people say, I knew it from the start.
No, that one got me. That one got me good. And then when I went back and watched it a second time, I saw everything that I had missed. They told us the entire way everything that was going to happen. Like they told us, and I didn't get it. And so I like that kind of thing. That's the kind of suspense or thriller, mysterious horror kind of thing I like. More paranormal, dark tones and stuff like that, as opposed to a slasher flick.
I've never been. I mean, look, as I said, the creature feature, as long as it's not too serious, we're talking about the sharktopusses and this sort of thing of the world because they're so ludicrous that they're not. But the actual kind of serious creature features, like the remember the Jennifer Lopez movie Anaconda, things like that. I don't like those very much. I find those a bit. I find those a bit off-putting. I'm not really.
I don't care for those.
No, comfortable with those at all. But when they just go nutso crazy, that's fine.
Right?
That's okay. But those ones, it's like that. Remember when they released, and I know that there's been several movies called Piranha, especially through the 70s.
It's so funny you were going to mention this one because I was just thinking of Piranha in 3D.
Oh, yes. And I saw it, I remember, because everyone was going on about it. And I remember when I saw it, and I felt sick. Like, I remember feeling really quite sick. Like,
they weren't for me.
No, because it's gore for gore's sake. It's not. I didn't find it enjoyable at all. I did, however, actually watch the sequel to it, Piranha Double D. Piranha Double D. And that one is actually all right because it's actually
because of the boobs.
Well, there's actually, I think, more boobs. There's actually more boobs in the first one, I think, than the second one, to be true. I know, but what I liked about it is it's kind of a piss take of the first movie. Like, they actually are kind of sending up the movie that it's the sequel to. And the other thing, too, is that David Hasselhoff is actually really good in it. He's actually really good. Because he kind of sends up the character of Mitch Buchanan from Baywatch in the actual movie. Like, he becomes the piranha hunter. Like, it's actually kind of, it's actually not bad. But otherwise, no, I don't really like those movies. I can still remember the only reason I wanted to watch Anaconda was I just fucking love Jennifer Lopez. And I would just watch anything with Jennifer Lopez, I think, at the time. I still will, actually. If Jennifer Lopez is in it, I'll probably go and see it. Same as Selma Hayek. The two, I just will go and watch
Selma
it.
too, yeah.
Yeah. Even though I've got a lot more respect for Selma Hayek,
well, we don't have to get into make it personal.
No. What I meant was I see Selma Hayek as a real artist, where I see Jennifer Lopez as... anyway. Anyway.
Okay, so
shouldn't go down this path. Anyway.
We need to wrap this up because...
Yes. How on earth we get from this movie to fucking Selma Hayek, I do not know. But
I don't know. How would you get from a movie to fucking Selma Hayek? I think maybe a drink or two, right?
Well, that would have a lot to do with it. And the name of the show. But anyway. All right. So, but anyway, look, yeah, this was definitely my favourite of the two. I actually really enjoyed watching this. I thought it was great.
I'm glad I amused you a little bit with my idea.
No,
so
you definitely
get
did.
to pick next.
All right. So look, anyone listening, if you want us to do more of these, let us know. Let us know, because we will do a couple more and see how it goes. And if people like them, we'll keep doing them. So, just it was definitely a lot of fun. I really enjoyed these. It was fun. Great.
I have a trivia question for people, not to answer now, but for you, if you don't know the answer now. Okay.
Okay.
But so for next time. Okay. So there is an old movie. Okay, that I believe for sure was the reason that the movie, The Castaway, was written or taken from. Okay?
Right.
And if you can tell me what it is, I'll give you points. Nothing else, just points. And I'll tell you were right. I don't think it's going to be what you're expecting. So if you can think of it, let me know.
Okay, I've got no idea, I'll be honest.
I know. All right. Yeah. Do your due diligence, sir, and let me know, because I don't think it's what you're going to be expecting.
All right, I'll see. So, all right, next time we chat, we'll see if I've been able to solve the riddle.
Okay. I don't know if it's for sure from that, but I'm pretty sure it is. So.
Oh yeah, I reckon sometimes when it's pretty obvious, it's pretty obvious, So.
Yeah, you'd have to watch the movie.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like we were talking before.
Not The Castaway. I think you'd have to watch the other movie. Sure.
Yeah. It's a bit like we were talking before we started recording about the movie Atomic Submarine. And watch that movie and then watch any episode of The Simpsons that has the aliens on it. And it's too obvious not to
Rigel
be real.
7, yes.
Yes, yeah, Rigel 7. All right. Okay, well, we may as well wrap it up. And
yes, let's do that.
Anyway, as always, it's been great fun. So we will be back. We will be back when we're back.
When we're back.
No worries. All right. No worries. Cheers, guys.
Bye.